Aristida, you see peaches in season from McLeod Farms. And my experience is they're excellent peaches, and now don't they have a center in Beaufort County? So they've expanded, and so the interest is there, and I think the growth is coming from below rather than from above. But also it's a question of how do you integrate all of the aspects of it. You know, Clemson should be heavily involved, and they may be, I'm just not sure. And I think today's U.S. Department of Agriculture could be quite amenable to giving some focus. In South Carolina would be one place in which they might want to focus, because I think there's enough impetus already on the ground. And Tom Vilsack is a former governor of Iowa, I believe, and which is a large agricultural state. And this settlement yesterday is sort of a harbinger of potential good, because I think it creates a new, it overcomes a lot of the past different problems, and also opens up, I think, new opportunities for connections. And I think that's what Charles's group has done so much in South Carolina, is connecting people from all aspects of rural development and bringing the state into it. And a lot of it has been done by low-key communication and forward thinking on the issues that are involved. And so I think the potential in South Carolina is actually quite positive. Now, it takes leadership and it takes follow-up, and I think South Carolina is actually in its own very low-key way has already done much to serve as a model for much of the rest of the country in preserving at least the rural part of the state, and in beginning the underpinnings and connections and resources for making it a viable economically. You want to speak?
I've been doing a little farming for about the last 35 years. I have an International Harvester tractor that was made in 1965, about 70 horsepower. It was the second largest tractor the International Harvester made at that time. Now they make them 200 or 300 horsepower. And the technological advances that have been made in agriculture, we used to, folks back in the World War II up until the 70s plowed up their grounds every year. No, we do no-till agriculture now. And there's a whole, when we control weeds with herbicides, you've got to have a pocket calculator. You've got to know how to calculate how much chemical you're putting out to the acre. And this is not the kind of thing that good old redneck could farm back in the 50s. They're all out of business. They're just, people that have to go to Clemson or, really have to learn how to do farming in today's time. And I certainly hope that we can get back to where people with 5 acres or 10 acres can use their sweat equity and make a living on it. But it's tough without taking advantage of all the technological advances that have been made.
Someone in the back, Candace.
Two quick questions. Mr. Campbell, you mentioned briefly about the loss of land. Well, first, the acquisition of land by African Americans after the Civil War, largely along the coast. So, you didn't mention as much of how that land has been lost, because you can tell the story of at the turn of the century, African Americans held 15 million acres of land in the country, and by the year 2000, only 5 million acres are held in ownership of African Americans. So if you can talk a little bit about how that land was lost and what that means for the ability for African Americans to develop wealth going forward. The other quick question is, as we look at these models going forward for a rural economy, a new economy, oftentimes when strategies are put forward by the community, they've been co-opted and packaged in such a way that the folk who originated the ideas can't take advantage of them. So if you could ask Campbell, either or both, share with us some ways to ensure that minorities, African Americans, rural folk can retain the ownership of these strategies and to be able to grow the wealth. Two quick questions.
Quick answers.
Wow. Well, I think everybody, or some people, know that story very well on how the land has been lost by African Americans, rural people, who find themselves too wealthy to keep what we call idle land. The case is usually such that folks find that they have to go to work to get more cash. So they stop farming. That's one way. And we talked about how we can probably improve farming to the extent that folks can still use the land to produce food and to produce, farm products that can be sold. But once the land is no longer farmed, and you're living in an area where there is resort development, in our case, along the coast, the adjacent development makes that land too valuable for you to keep without farming it. I call it the new crop. And the folks who are usually there, the indigenous population who's there when the development comes, in most cases don't know how to grow that new crop. So the land takes on the value of the new crop. The taxes are commensurate with the new crop, which is the condos and the timeshares. And nobody can afford the taxes anymore. And much of that land and the coastline is jointly owned by family members. It's the old tradition where families owned the land and worked it together. The eldest member of the family is usually the respected leader who can dictate how that land is used. You can plant your beans here, you can put your watermelon over here, Joe. Okay, nephew, you can put your house over there. And it worked. The new laws say, you got interest in that land that I want to buy. I can buy you out, and I would like to have that land for the new crop. And the rest of the family members are vulnerable to the sale because they cannot compete with that new partner that has bought up one of the heirs. Case in point was Ken Hoy, right here outside of Charleston. Well, we witnessed folks being driven off their land because one member sold off the interest. And the law doesn't protect that at all.